you don't want to point them into another direction. You want to make it as easy as possible. You speak to them on the phone, invite them to come in.
Get them in the door.
Exactly. When they're in the door, you can show them how awesome your team is.
Yeah.
You can go through any payment plans. You can talk to them about their insurance. That might be the deciding factor. Maybe their insurance doesn't work with you, but they love their experience so much that they start treatment with your practice.
Welcome to the Neon Buzz, where we offer marketing advice for oral, aesthetic, and other elective healthcare professionals. Sit back and relax while we share our digital marketing secrets to help you grow your practice.
Hello and welcome to the Neon Buzz. I'm Opal and this is Catie, and today we're going to be talking about the many ways that practices lose leads, whether that's from not showing up online to messing up their initial follow-up. We've seen it all. We're going to be calling out the specific red flags and everything that your practice needs to know to stop them.
I feel like this episode's going to have a lot of actionable tips in it of things that practices can start doing today. I know that throughout the episode, I already know many things that can be done on the spot to work towards keeping those leads. So I'm very excited.
So we're going to start by going over all the different places that your practice should be showing up online. We're going to cover all the red flags that come up when you are following up with that new lead, and also the things that practices should be doing and implementing within their current follow-up systems.
Yes.
To get us started, what are some areas that you've seen where practices are not showing up right online?
So I think there's three main ways that you need to show up online. That's your website, your Google business profile, and social media. And I think your website is a big one, right? Because that's like the mecca of all the information about who you are as a practice, what you stand for, what's important to you. The most information can be found on your website. So it's super important that all of the numbers are up to date, your location information is up to date, that the doctors who are at your practice are up to date on your website.
That's a point that I really want to cover because I talked about this in a previous episode that we filmed, but I was on the hunt for a new dentist.
Yes.
And your insurance will list off all the different practices that you can work with, but they do it specifically by the doctor's name.
Right.
So I'm in Google looking at these doctors' names, and they're popping up on random websites outside of my city area. It was really confusing. And the literal first doctor that I landed on, who had an actual page for herself,
where it made sense.
Yes, in the Memphis area, I booked with because I was so annoyed with having to look around for that. That's huge. That's something that people may not even think about, is that make sure that the information on your site is actually correct. Yeah,
and always up to date. The other thing on your website is your lead form. And I think a lot of people are losing leads and they don't even know it because their form is too long. So any question after those first 3 to 4, you have a 50% chance of losing that lead. And that's a big, big number.
Bigger than people think, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I know I've experienced it on the patient side of things. You're being asked 7 questions before you're even in the door. It just feels overwhelming. And it was a big task to even send out that form in the first place. And so I know that makes sense to me that would happen. But I think that's a big way that people are losing leads and they don't even know it.
Yeah, just on the website alone.
Yeah, just on the website alone. And then you have the Google business profile. So if people are searching for you, they might already even know that they want to come see you. So they don't need to look at your website. They're just going to go to your Google business profile. And all of that needs to be up to date too. It's sort of a landing page of its own, full of information on it. And those reviews, all sorts of things.
Yeah, people don't even think about it, but the Google business profile, you can add posts to it. So you could take a blog that your website has recently posted, put it on there, let people know about that information. You can take a social post, maybe about an update with your practice or something you really want to focus on. Yeah. Put it on there. It gets right in front of the people that need to see it. You mentioned reviews.
Yes.
I don't want to leave that off because that is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Something that we work with a lot of practices on to help implement a system for them to get more reviews from their patients.
Yes.
That's where everyone's going to see it. We actually did a blog on this. So I'm going to do a little subtle plug here for anyone who's interested, because it's a really cool blog where we talked about ways to get more referrals and reviews for your practice. So we'll link it. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'll link it down below. Yeah. But it'll be also on our website for anyone who's interested.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's definitely a spot to prioritize those reviews, because Facebook has a spot for reviews too. But most likely we see people going to Google to look at those reviews, which, I mean, there's so many stats out there about how important reviews are to people. I know we've talked about them on the podcast before, but it's a good point to make that's up there too. And then there's social media. That's like my realm of expertise that I love. And I recently was talking about how your social media is a landing page. If somebody gets, 3 orthodontists that they think they want to see, or they see that your friend recently shared a post from, Neon Canvas Orthodontics. They're going to go look at your page. They might even contact you on social media. I know I send out a lot of DMs to businesses, especially ones that feel like there's a real person behind the account. So that's an area that I think leads can get lost on there in the DMs. There's a bunch of different buckets in DMs too. Like there's primary, general, and there's also the requests area. Don't let anything get stuck in those requests. It's super, super easy to let those go.
That's the thing that like practice could just be doing on the daily. Like
when be proactive about.
When they're going in, like responding to comments or anything, just checking your DMs in case you have a lead in there.
Yes. The social media is like the digital word of mouth. There's definitely, you can definitely get leads from social media, whether it's an ad or your organic posts. So definitely one to keep on the radar of ways you're getting leads and showing up online.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people always discount social media, but there's a lot to it.
That's how my favorite.
I know, that's how people communicate nowadays. So the point you brought up, website, Google Business Profile, social media, all really important. If you don't already have a presence on there, you need to have one. You need to keep it updated. You need to make sure that everything is optimized to really present yourself well.
Yeah.
The other side that we've seen when it comes to ways that people are losing leads system.
Yeah.
So the initial follow-up is really big. And
huge.
There's a lot of red flags that come up with it. I know we both have some of our own.
Yeah, some red flags.
Yeah, specifically red flags. That's what we're focusing on today. So from your end, if you want to like kick it off, what is one red flag that you have seen when it comes to handling lead follow-up?
Yeah, on the topic of the initial follow-up, those first 24 hours are huge, huge, huge. And I feel like people can get really lenient in that first 24 hours on following up with the lead, but it is the most important time. If you don't contact a lead within those first 24 hours, your chance of getting them to schedule drops to like 80%. That's a lot. That's a lot. So if you can, in those first 24 hours, immediately when the lead comes in, make it a number one priority, send a text, give them a call, that is huge. And then by the end of the day, shoot them an email. That's 3 ways you've contacted them in those first 24 hours, which are super important. I feel like how they come to you is how you should reach out to them too. That's super important.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Something that practices don't think about is a lot of moms nowadays are millennials.
Yeah.
So if they shoot you a text, make sure you text them back. Like, don't give them a call. They don't want to talk on the phone. People have different ways of preferred communication.
Yes.
And something to also think about is over half of new patient leads can come through text.
Yes.
So, if you don't have a system set up already for you to text patients back, then you need to have one.
And text can be casual too. It needs to be a conversation. They're feeling like they're talking to a human. I think a lot of people are hesitant maybe to communicate over text because they feel like they're not going to get the information they need. But like I would send over my insurance card over text. I don't care, if it is easier for me, great. Whatever you need, I'll send over text. So I feel like that's not really a roadblock for people these days.
Yeah, I've literally have just sent my insurance over text. So I can relate to that. Whatever just makes it easier for people.
Yeah.
So we talked about the initial follow-up.
Yeah.
Something else that comes with that is, people will get a lead in. So let's say someone calls and they leave a voicemail because your front desk is busy.
Yep.
Someone calls back. Someone on your team calls back. They don't get the person. They leave a voicemail and then they say, check. I've finished. Like, I'm done with this lead. I did what I needed to do.
Yep.
Don't do that. There needs to be more follow-up in place. So, you can give them a call. They don't answer. Try shooting them a text message. We talked about that. It's a great way to reach people. So even if they did originally call you, reach out in more ways than just one.
Yes. I feel like if you're doing that quickly, you have the chance to even get them in their research phase to stop them sending out any other lead forms. Maybe they've sent it out, there's A, B, and C doctor. They send it to A. A answers really fast. B and C never even got the lead. So they're lost. And you have the chance to hop in there and grab that lead if you're doing that, like you said, calling and texting and emailing all on that first day and not just checking a box. Another red flag I see is bad phrasing or like putting the burden of following up back on to the patient. So they call you, that you've gotten the lead. You call them back and you say, oh, well, call us back. Then you're like playing phone tag.
I hate that. Yeah. Phone tag's the worst.
So instead of call us back to schedule your appointment, which they already called you in the first place to schedule their appointment, give them something that's more achievable, that's a smaller bite. So saying, we could see you on Monday or Tuesday at 3:30, or, you're giving them options. It's kind of like a toddler, you gotta shorten the options that they have.
Parenting.
Yes, to make the decision-making process easier. So I feel like if you give them a lot to do, or you put the ball back in their court, then you lose sort of your power in their decision.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really big red flag that I see.
And that's part of, making it easier for them.
Yep.
That's the entire goal here. We want to make it as easy as possible for your lead. So on that topic is this concept of roadblocks. So you want to limit the amount of roadblocks that you give a potential patient.
Yeah.
If you're on that initial call with them, you don't need to be saying, okay, well, call your insurance to make sure that you work with us. You don't need to be saying, make sure that you reach out to your doctor first, or you go see a dentist before you come to us. You don't want to point them into another direction. We want to make it as easy as possible. You speak to them on the phone, invite them to come in.
Get them in the door.
Exactly. When they're in the door, you can show them how awesome your team is.
Yeah.
You can go through any payment plans. You can talk to them about their insurance. That might be the deciding factor. Maybe their insurance doesn't work with you, but they love their experience so much that they start treatment with your practice.
Yeah, I feel like getting them in the door first is really important, and then it's sometimes even easier to have those conversations about payment plans or whatnot in person once they've fallen in love with your practice too, and like who you guys are. So
exactly, and it's also just so disheartening when you're on the phone with someone. You're like, I really want to book an appointment, and they're like, do this, 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 and this, and you're like, oh, okay, well,
yeah, no,
just wanted to get this done.
Those roadblocks,
checked off my list, but
yeah. Not giving them another to-do list. Another red flag is not really listening. I think that's super, super important. You might be having the same conversation 50 times. You don't ever want the person who's calling to feel like they're the 50th person you've talked to that day. I feel like they can be really disheartening, and it's just not. Nobody wants to feel that way. I recently saw a clip from the CBS morning show, and they were interviewing this guy who didn't speak for 17 years.
Gosh.
And he said that he made the decision to not speak because when he was talking to people, he was anticipating what they were going to say, and that he had already decided what he was going to say back before they had even finished talking. And I thought that was so interesting, and I think that always, not even just in business, that people do that a lot, and I thought that was really interesting.
It hits home. That's a point. It makes you really sit back and think about how you communicate with people.
Yes. So making it a personal experience and just be a human. I feel like that's a big theme throughout all the points we've made and all the red flags that we've been over. Just being human. I mean, even there's so many small things you can do. Like if they call and they mention their, a mom calls and they mention their daughter's name who is going to be the patient. Remember her name, and say, oh, well.
Sprinkle it throughout the call.
Yeah. And then when they come in the office, take that extra second to read on the chart and be like, mom's name is this and patient's name is this. Name dropping, right? Everyone loves when you remember their name. So that's a big one.
With that too, scripts. Scripts are really popular when it comes to
that's a good point.
Chatting with someone on the phone about starting treatment. You can use that as an outline, but we don't want you to sound like a robot.
Yes.
You need to, back to what you said, just be human, put your own spin on it, take the information, but make it your own.
Yes. There's robocalls.
Yeah.
If you want to talk to a robot.
And nobody does. Yeah. No one likes that. Everyone always is dreading. It's like, oh my gosh, another AI system I have to speak to get to where I need to go.
Yeah.
Talked about a few red flags. Just a bit of a recap. The 5 that we went over. First one, being lenient with follow-up. So try to be quick with it. As soon as that lead comes in, follow up as soon as possible. If it comes in over the weekend, set some time aside on Monday to knock it out.
Yes, yeah.
And when you do knock it out, do not just check it off your list. We want you to call them, send them a text message, get that follow-up going. Next thing, putting the burden back on patients. We don't want to do that at all.
Yeah.
So making it as easy as possible. When you make that call, give them a few treatment times that they can come in and start treatment with the practice. Next thing, don't start with roadblocks. Again, don't send them away. Just get them in the door. Whatever you can do to get them in your office.
Everything's easier after that.
Exactly. And then finally, just be human.
Yeah.
Just discuss things. Don't sound like a robot. Talk about patient names. Make them feel welcomed at the practice.
Be an active listener.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Show them that what their experience is going to be like at your practice before they even come in.
Yeah.
back to the initial points that we talked about.
Yes.
We talked about showing up online, places that practices need to be, the few things that they could be doing wrong when it comes to their initial follow-up.
Yeah.
Now let's discuss general follow-up. So what should they be doing when, they've reached out to their lead, they now exist as a lead within their system, if they even have a system.
Right.
What are some things that practices should be doing?
I kind of see like two big buckets. There's like the ideal number of times that you want to contact a lead. And then hand in hand with that is like the persistence required to keep up with the number of times you're going to follow up with them. We see that it takes, sometimes up to 8 touch points before somebody's ready to make a decision, especially on a big ticket item like orthodontic treatment.
Yeah, any like elective procedure too.
Yes. That is a big purchase. It's like, in the same vein of like buying a car, right? Like that's going to take a lot more research and time to make that decision versus what toothpaste am I going to get at Target. So it can take up to 8 times. So it's super important to have the cadence right of what those 8 times are. If you don't, you mentioned systems a second ago. If you don't have a lead nurturing system, super, super important. All 8 touch points should not come in one day,
That would scare them.
Yes.
They'd be like, oh my gosh, block, 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 block. Leave me alone.
That would have the opposite effect. So I think super important to have a lead nurturing system. We use Contour for our clients, and Contour is going to reach out 7 times in the first 2 weeks with the cadence that's not going to annoy them, but is going to keep them on the hook and let them know that you're still wanting them to be a patient. You're still thinking about them. Day 1 is a call and a text. Day 2 is an email. Day 3 is an email and a call. So on and so forth. Keep up whatever that cadence is super, super important. And then you're talking about the persistence of it. Silence does not mean no.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I think that's an easy out for people. It's like, oh, well, they haven't answered in 3 months, so they must,
Yeah,
it must be a no.
Wait for them to officially say, I'm not interested in treatment.
Yeah.
I'm good. Thank you, though.
Yeah. When you hear a no, then maybe they're not a lead. Maybe they've gone somewhere else. But people get busy. Things come up. So I wouldn't write off somebody who hasn't answered in 3 months. There's things you can say, too, when you're doing, the follow-up. If you're, reaching out once a month like you should be, after that initial, 2 weeks of follow-up, saying something, like, Dr. John Doe would love to answer any questions you have. Or, hey, we have an opening tomorrow. We would love to get you in this spot.
Or even letting them know if you have like a promotion going on. So,
yeah, that's another good one.
You reached out a few months back. If you haven't started treatment yet, we'd love to get you in for this awesome price. Let us know if you have any questions.
Yeah, I feel like getting them in quickly and offering like that little snippet, like, oh, if we have a cancellation, let me call this lead who might, want to fit in there. People are not necessarily planning out what the next month or 2 weeks looks like. So if you can get somebody who's super busy to say, hey, we can fit you in tomorrow. Tomorrow's doable.
Yes.
Tomorrow is like, I can do tomorrow. That makes a lot of sense. And maybe that is all it took. It's like a game of opportunity, really, in the follow-up time afterwards. When can we get them?
Yeah, because you might reach them at a point. Like you could be following up, they're in a meeting, they're taking their kids to school, something comes up, but then you reach them on that day where they're not really doing something or they're between something.
Yes.
And that could be, the winning ticket.
Yes. And you don't want to be too salesy. You still want to be personal. I feel like we all have ad fatigue and,
Yes, we're all tired of being sold to.
Yes. Really big. So if you can be personal in your questions to them and the follow-up that you are doing once a month after that first, 2 weeks, I think that makes a big, big difference. So super important to keep those 2 things in mind. Reaching out to them until you hear a no, being persistent, being personable. It's the way to go.
Yeah. All right. I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah.
So for anyone who's listening, if you've heard a few things that you are like, I don't think my team's doing this, or we need to really clean up this process, send this episode to your team. Just something quick for them to listen to.
Yeah.
Everyone is, in most cases, doing their best effort, but there's just there's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So, listen, if you have any questions, reach out to us. Leave a comment, shoot us a DM on Instagram.
Send me a DM at Neon Campus. I'll answer.
And we're happy to answer any questions that come along. But for now, that's all we have on the different ways that a practice could be losing leads.
Yeah, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface.
Oh, I know.
Even though we shared a lot.
There's a lot more to it. There's the whole side too. Like once you get that patient in the door, they've booked their consult.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That could be
converting them into an actual patient, that will be a separate episode. We'll cover all that in detail then. But thank you for tuning into our episode today. If you want more from the Neon Buzz, check out some of our previous episodes. We cover SEO, we cover social media, anything you can think of to grow your practice. Until next time.
Bye.